it's okay to be passionate about something and then change your mind, as long as you are a student and intentional with your choices. I think our world is noisy, especially if you're active in like social media and even on LinkedIn. Our world is super noisy. And so you have to create space, whether that looks like time or a hike, or you have to intentionally create space to be in your own head. And that's when I think the best decisions are made, is when you really listen to yourself.
Welcome to the Great Life Experiment podcast. I'm your host, Monique Schaefer, and together we'll grapple with our messy, beautiful, and ever-changing personal and professional lives and the business world around us. I deeply believe there is no one right way to do this thing called life. Let's experiment together. As a quick reminder, friends, please note that this podcast is an independent production, and the information presented here and views expressed here reflect my personal opinion and do not reflect the views or positions of any organization or company that I'm affiliated with. Enjoy the episode. Hello and welcome to the Great Life Experiment podcast. I'm your host, Monique Schaefer, and today we are joined by Kelsey Murray. In my world, she will always be Kelsey Bracken. She is a wife and a mom, and we go way back because she was my roommate in college. We lived next door to each other freshman year, and we were roommates all through college. We lived together afterwards, and we have been friends for, oh my gosh, this is going to give our age away, 23 plus years. She has a background in marketing and management from Regis University. And then she also focused on digital marketing, and she had her certificate from the Northwestern Kellogg School of Management. Oh my gosh, besides being just one of the nicest, kindest humans that I know, she has deep, deep corporate experience as well, 10 plus years at an ad agency. For 5.5 years, she was a fractional CMO. She did consulting. And then besides moving and going to different places in her life, she got her real estate license. She's an ex-pro cheerleader. I was always secretly jealous because that was never going to be me, but my ex-pro cheerleader. She was a portrait photographer. We both share the love of photography, Pilates enthusiast, and she is also a franchise owner. So from her bio alone, you can see that she has navigated many, many transitions in her life. And what I love about Kelsey is she always comes from a place of kindness, grace, compassion, and is very deceivingly underneath that. You might think that that calm, soft demeanor is incredibly passionate, driven, focused, and one of the most talented people that I know. So we are going to have a conversation today just talking about all the different transitions that we've had. And I think the big theme for today is living intentionally and giving yourself permission that you may do something in life and making a conscious choice for a period of time, and you are allowed to change your mind. And as we've talked about in prior episodes, that we all have seasons of our life. Some are shorter, some are longer, and there are transitions in between them. Some are easier, some are harder, and how we evolve, and that there is no one right way to do this thing called life. And that is the theme of this podcast. And my hope for everybody listening today, whether it's my story, whether it's Kelsey's story, or you have some other variation, right? Giving yourself permission that this is the first time any of us have done this, and that we are discovering ourselves, rediscovering ourselves, discovering the next version of ourselves through each season in each chapter. So Kelsey, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Me too. Me too. Okay. So that's an impressive background. And you have had so many changes and transitions. I think this is going to be a wide ranging conversation. So I'm going to kind of start a little bit more recent, and we can go back in time also. But you had made the transition from being in the corporate space, working in the ad agency for 10 years. And I'd love to hear about that experience. And then you had made the transition to being a stay-at-home mom and then into the entrepreneurial space as well. Like those are very, very distinct changes that I think a lot of people, even if they haven't made them, can relate to, especially if they're working parents right now.
Mhm.
So maybe let's talk about some of those big transitions and phases, wherever you want to take that.
Sure. So I was at the ad agency. I call them hard left turns, just kind of jokingly, but you do have to give yourself space to make those left turns. But I started at the ad agency. I was there for 10 years and I feel like I grew up there. I really did. I went in there right out of college. I learned a lot from some incredibly talented, creative minds, business minds, and I loved every second of it. But during that time, I got married and I fell in love and bought a house and did all the things. And I had the picture perfect life that from the outside looking in is what I thought I wanted. But then my husband and I ran into a roadblock of not being able to get pregnant. And we tried and spent a lot of money trying.
Mhm.
And it just never happened for us. And so it was the first time I was really faced with a hard decision of potentially giving up this career that I thought I wanted, that I worked really hard for, that I was extremely proud of, that my family was proud of, and making the choice to leave that for something that I so desperately wanted and I thought would fill my cup. So I ended up leaving that agency and got my real estate license, thinking that that lifestyle would be more conducive to being a mom that I wanted to be. And honestly, as soon as I left the agency, I got pregnant within like 2 months, I think. And
Yeah.
it was really my body's response to this glamorous but stressful life and
Yeah.
global life that I was leading. So we got pregnant naturally, which was such a wonderful and exciting time. But then my kids came along and I loved it and it was everything that I wanted until it wasn't. And to be able to say that to you right now
Yeah.
took me years to
Yeah.
say that without guilt because I had asked for this. I had given my career up for this. And there was a lot of like, why isn't being a mom and staying at home with this wonderful gift filling me up? And so I struggled with that silently for a very, very long time because there was so much guilt
Yeah.
laced with not feeling fulfilled by being a mom.
For anybody listening today that either was there or maybe is currently there, what was the head talk in the silence? Right? Because you weren't silent in your head. You were probably
Mm.
silent to the rest of us and the rest of the world. But what were those kind of thoughts and feelings that you had, or maybe stories, beliefs that you had to look at and maybe pivot to not sit in that place of guilt?
I think for me, the hardest thing was looking at myself in the mirror and not recognizing myself. So
Mhm.
let's just talk round numbers. For 30 years, literally 30 years, I was on this one path of being a career woman. I was an account director at an ad agency. And then all of a sudden, my life got turned upside down, and I'm a stay at home mom with a small child. And so for me, it was a lot of talk around. I think this is where side hustles come from, to be honest, with moms is like,
Mhm.
okay, I'm going to be a mom and I want to protect this time with my kids,
Yeah.
but I'm going to do this side hustle because I think it'll kind of fill my cup. And so for me, it was a lot of like brainstorming of like, I can do this and this, I can do this and this. And that helped. That kind of distracted me from honestly resenting my husband when he traveled because I was stuck at home, or resenting my kid even because I didn't necessarily enjoy playing the games that he wanted to play.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I'll get judged for saying
No.
things,
Thank
but
you for saying that. I think there's so much pressure, especially when the kids are little. It's like you have this desire to play with them and be with them and love them. And then you're sitting on the ground after like playing Hot Wheels
yeah,
for the 100,000th time. And you're like, I don't want to play this.
right,
I don't want to chase the little car. Like,
right.
I love you. I'll teach you how to build Legos on your own, but I don't want to do this anymore. And I think there's a lot of guilt of I should
Mm-hmm.
feel like I want to play all the time. It's like, yo, I love you, but mommy needs like adult time. I need something besides
Right.
you. So
Which is
I
why
think this will resonate with a lot of people. And if anybody judges it, then that's on them.
I think there are women cut out, and I know women that are cut out to be a mom. And
We're best friends with one
yeah,
of them. She's the embodiment of all things motherhood. I'm like, how do you do this?
yes, and that's okay. That's her journey, and that's. But I think I was cut from a different cloth, and so I started joining mom groups. So I started participating in MOPS. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's Mothers of Preschoolers, and in that community, there was a range of women that were stay-at-home moms, but then were also women who had careers and are
Mhm.
now stay-at-home moms. And so I started to realize there were some shared experiences and there was a lot of validation in that.
Mhm.
So MOPS made a big difference in my life. And honestly, MOPS is wonderful. They take your children and you get to go have breakfast and have adult conversation. And even
Perfect.
if it was just for like 2 hours, I think it was so wonderful just to bend my brain a little bit differently. And that's what I realized. I need to bend my brain. I need to be stimulated in other
Mhm.
ways. And that's okay. That's a wonderful thing. And so my husband wonderfully encouraged me. He and I are total opposites. He's much more of an entrepreneur and a risk taker, and I'm much more calculated risk taker. But he's like, go find what fills your cup. And to use your word, let's experiment. And
Mhm.
he gave me that space to make
Yeah.
mistakes. He went out, I said, I think I want to do photography. And so he went out and bought me the nicest camera and he said, go do it. And then I said, I love fashion. I grew up, my mom was a costume designer. I love fashion. I think I want to be a stylist. So he found a job and, and I did that kind of on the side. Um, but all of those things while I was experimenting, I was like, okay, this is it. This is going to be it. I'm going to make my millions doing this. Okay, this is it. This is it. I'm going to be the best mom and a millionaire. I'm going to do
Mhm.
it all.
Mhm.
But I mean, spoiler alert, it didn't turn out that way.
Not yet. Not yet.
Not yet. But I think what was important was I started to really doubt myself in the ability to choose what does fill me up.
Yeah.
And what was very clear was like, well, I don't even really know who I am anymore. Right. Because like
Mhm.
I had gone to college and I had this wonderful career, and I know who that person was. That was the person that my parents were proud of. That was the person I worked so hard to be. But now that I was a parent, it got muddy and gray. And like, I don't know who this person is. And so there was a lot of like self discovery that I had to do. And that's really hard work and it takes time.
It does.
So
It
I don't know
does.
if I answered your question.
Yeah. No, it absolutely does. And so going from this place of discovery then in the journey. So walk us through some of the self-discovery, right? The side hustles and then becoming a franchise owner also, because that becomes something more of like business ownership too. And then that ties all the way back to your major as well. But that was another leap also.
Another hard left turn. So I started to doubt myself and the ability to really choose what my path looks like and what I want the rest of my life to look like. And I actually had created this marketing consulting company using my marketing degree because that was a safe place for me. It's what I knew how to do. It's what was honestly easy for me to do because I had been doing it for so long and I could make fairly good money at it because I had the credentials and the background to get clients. But it wasn't filling me up. My daughter started kindergarten. I found myself with a little bit more time
Mhm.
and I fast forwarded. I said, okay, my marketing consulting company is doing pretty well. And in 5 years, do I want to keep doing this?
Yeah.
Or do I want to take a turn and try something totally different? But I doubted myself in like, well, what would that be? I've tried all these other things and they didn't work out.
Mhm.
And I had this moment of clarity at church, actually. My priest said something to the effect of, and I think it's a Carl Jung quote of like, if you don't know who you are, the world will tell you who you are.
Mhm.
And I love that because it really forces you to look inward. And in that, I realized, okay, what if all of these careers I had, hats I wore, actually prepared me for something?
Mm-hmm.
So they weren't necessarily different. They were all just preparing me for the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so that gave me so much more freedom
Yeah.
to experiment and try new things. It was hard work, but I don't know if it's by my design or by his design with a capital H. I stumbled across a brand that spoke to me. Really, it's in the fashion world. And so I would get to use my background in fashion and design. But as a franchise owner, I get to use my photography skills. I get to use my marketing skills. I get to use my design and construction skills. I
Mm-hmm.
get to use all these seasons that we talk about. Maybe these actually prepared me for this next step.
Yeah.
And so that was exciting to me. I was like, okay, I can do that. That feels like, okay, rather than these missteps, they were actually stepping stones
Yeah.
to something even better.
Yeah.
So I'm just starting that being a franchise owner. So, stay tuned.
I love that. I love that. And that's a clue there, right? Of there's excitement versus just a place of like, I don't know if this is quite the right thing. And I think I'm enjoying this season broadly of like the age bracket
Mhm.
that we're in because it's not being 20 and trying to
Yeah,
figure out who am I? Because you can't think your way through that sometimes. Never. Like you have to actually experience life and try different things on to be like, I like this, I don't like that. And now looking back when it comes to making a pivot, it's like I do have lots of skills and experience, and maybe it doesn't follow something neat and tidy, and people can say, oh, this is who you are because we're multi passionate. But it's like I have various skills that I can bring together in different ways. And I think for
absolutely.
me, this is how, for me, you've had more pivots, I think, career wise than I have, but I've had major ones going from peace and justice and human rights to nonprofit to doing business development and fundraising, right? And then doing consulting and being a tech architect.
Yes.
And then, right, being in the product space. But the things that I've invested in along the way has always been so much either personal development, coaching, multiple business, like almost like B schools. So doing Marie Forleo's B school, a Tony Robbins thing there, various workshops. I'm the constant person of like, what's out there? How should I be thinking about something? And it took me a long time to figure out like my through line was I love bringing ideas to life. And so
Mhm.
every pivot has been I have an idea or something and I don't know how to do that. Like I wanted to build an app
Mhm.
15 years ago. I'm like, I don't know how to do that. Let's go work for a software company. Like, how do you actually build software? And so figuring out how to bring ideas to life. And, I'm telling Ben that all of those classes, even if they didn't manifest in the way I thought they would, they've shaped who I am and how I show up in the corporate space, or not being afraid to start a podcast, even though I don't have a communications background, and knowing how much I can do on my own versus when I know I'm going to get stuck in my own head and I need that person that's a little bit farther along to reach out and be like, help bridge that gap for me. Right.
Mhm.
So for me, it's been investing in coaching and advisors as well.
Absolutely.
And for Ben and I, we agreed we're each other's best friends and we're not each other's coach. So having that third party coach too is helpful.
Having a backseat to your relationship with Ben and your career, I think your superpower, I don't know if you ever talk about this, but
Mm.
I think your superpower is curiosity and
Oh,
calmness. You are just a student of this world. And I think that is so fun to be around. But
oh,
you bring a sense of calm. And I think people appreciate that and want to be around that. I think that's why you and I get along so well, is because I'm told often that my superpower is that I'm able to stay calm
yeah.
in the most stressful moments. And so, like, and my husband's kind of the same way. We joke that we're never below a 5 or above a 7.
Yes. Ben and I are the same way. For people that are watching the video, I'm putting my hand across the kind of flat line. If I go too high or too low, that's when I know something's off. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. And that's how I knew when I needed to make a change is when I went too low. And I was like, okay, this isn't filling me up. And so I really do think that's your superpower. And you have to know what your superpower is and capitalize on that. I think
I've
that's
had more people talk to me lately from a like going to the superpower perspective, particularly in the corporate world, because everybody's in it's in the tech space and everywhere, but there's just so much profound change happening. And how do we think about our careers? What does AI mean for our jobs? How do we evolve? How do we stay relevant? And just the cycles of growth and disruption in our economy, in politics, in business, in what we expect of ourselves, like just the cycles of disruption are so frequent and they're not little. Um, and so I'm talking to a lot of people that know that they have skills like you've talked about, right? You picked up different pieces and skills along the way, and people are starting to doubt, like, is that still relevant? Am I still relevant? And so I think there are people being in a mix of, yes, we always need to be learning and growth mindset. And how do we stay relevant and evolve? What lights us up now? Maybe that is no longer serving us anymore, being grateful for what we had, but the ability to pivot. And at the same time, there's a lot more reflection of who am I besides my resume? And does my resume actually tell the fullness of my story of who I am?
Mhm.
And so having more and more conversations and, I've been fortunate to, work with someone that specializes in personal branding. And at first I had actually three different people and tell me, people that are CEOs or SVPs being like, you need to figure out what your brand is. And I don't have a marketing background. Like, I'm not an influencer. Like, I'm an entrepreneur, right? I work in the corporate space. Like, what do you mean personal branding? I don't even want to be on social media. What do you mean by that? And they're like, you have to define how you show up in the world. You have a brand. And do you know what your brand is? And so, doing coaching, luckily our company has coaching for, directors and above, so getting a sense of your brand from a coach, but then working outside with an outside agency of what are the things that I want to come through? Because maybe the things that I'm known for,
Mhm.
I do well, but that's not what I want to lean into
Mhm.
anymore. And so how do you shift that? And what is the essence of you beyond your resume? And I actually have an upcoming episode talking about branding and being on LinkedIn or social space of how do you define your brand beyond your resume?
I was fortunate enough to have come from a family that was high achieving and very successful, entrepreneurial. And my grandpa had started Kelley Blue Book. And so he, back in the day, had the vision for turning a list of used cars into a book that he could then sell to other dealerships so that there was the value. And that's not the point of my story. The point of my story is he went on to become famous for what he had created. But as his granddaughter, what I believe his brand is a family man. Because
Mm,
while he created such an incredible concept and marketed it so perfectly and wonderfully, he is known for creating or for building our family. To this day, I have 12 cousins, and to this day, we are all the closest of friends. And that was by his design. He used his success and his finances to keep our family close and together. And I think what's also, and he would take us on family vacations every summer, and he would
mhm,
do grandparent or grandkids weekends. And I cherish those moments because he was doing it with such great intention of like, yes, I'm going to be known for the Kelley Blue Book, but I also want to be known as this family man who created such a wonderful, close family. And as a
mhm,
result, I'm so proud to be a part of a family of high achieving people. And I think I've mentioned this to you, but like everything from a veterinarian to an arborist to a franchise owner to business person to moms, like we have a full range of abilities, but we all feel very successful and rich in the terms that, not the financial terms, but in the terms that we have a solid foundation in this family that he created for us.
mhm.
So I totally identify like his brand is Kelley Blue Book,
Mhm.
but his brand is also Family Man, and he has such a legacy that I'm so proud to be a part of.
Yeah.
And so I, in turn, am like, I'm more than my resume. I'm
Yes.
more than what you read at the beginning. I am more than a marketing director for a global agency. And that's where the really hard work comes in. But I'm so glad, like you said, 40, the age I'm 40, I'm over 40 now, but comes with so much freedom to
Mhm.
like, okay, I've had all of these experiences, but now I get to do it with a little bit more intention if I give like myself the time and the space to think about it and do it
Mhm.
and really identify what do I want my brand to be more than
Yeah.
my LinkedIn brand, more than my Instagram brand, more than my elevator speech that my
Right.
husband's held at a party. And that's all I care about is like, who am I?
Yeah. You as the whole person.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that you share that about your family. And I'm a big fan of Ray Dalio, and I love his principles that he publishes. He's now, I'm not sure for people listening if they're familiar with Ray Dalio, but right, he founded Bridgewater, right? Very, very one of the most successful hedge fund companies. And now that he is at a certain point in his career, he's very much giving back. Like, what are the mental models or the principles that I've lived by and that have made me successful? And I appreciate that he's super clear that these are my principles and my philosophies, and they're not for everyone, that there isn't a right way. Try them on, what works for you. And so that, how do you bring family, prioritizing wealth and family, that's a principle you have for your life.
Mhm.
And I think there's another principle that relates to this conversation that has come through in your family. And that's right. How do you continuously make those small changes for better and
Absolutely.
constantly be refining in that opportunity? And so, can you speak to that a little bit and how you choose to use that, and how maybe that philosophy, maybe you didn't know it at the time, but really guided how you thought about your various changes?
Yeah, absolutely. So, on the other side of my family, my dad was fairly successful in the auto industry, and he adopted this philosophy called Kaizen, which basically is making continuous small changes for the better. And it's certainly a corporate philosophy, but I realize now as an adult that my dad was encouraging us to continually better ourselves through opportunities and making changes, allowing us to make changes. Here's a really good college example, and you can edit this out, Mo, if you want, but like,
No.
I got in trouble at Regis one day. It was some stupid thing we had a party in our dorm room, and I think I walked out of the dorm room with a beer, and you're not allowed to do that. Anyways, I got written up by the RA and I had to go to court. And of course they called my dad, who was, and he said she got in trouble, she can't do that again, and da, 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 da. And my dad calls me, and I remember this conversation so clearly because he said, Kelsey, I'm so glad you finally got in trouble.
Oh,
And he said, but don't do it again. And that sums up how he raised me so perfectly. He gave me the space to experiment and try and push myself. And he was my soft place to land if it didn't work out, or that color didn't look good on me or whatever. But he gave me the opportunity to learn from it rather than discipline me. And
yeah.
that's exactly how we are parenting our kids too, is like, okay, let's take stock of what just happened,
Yeah.
but let's make little changes, and eventually that's going to culminate into something beautiful.
I love that. I love that. And I think it's nice when it's modeled for you and then paying it forward with your kids. And I think there's also something that you talk about, giving yourself grace. And so maybe we can talk
Yeah.
about that. Sometimes it's hard to give ourselves that grace and that permission, because growing up, we're looking for the permission and the approval of our parents, and then we want the approval of our friends around us, and then we want the approval for boss, insert some authority figure. And then at some point it's, no, I need to make those changes and constantly refine And even if they don't approve, I approve of me. And it's
It's heavy.
like as a recovering perfectionist, right? Anybody that's worked with me knows like my mantra is it's progress, not perfection. But how many times like I've cared so much about a promotion and like I've held on to something and it's like, I know I've already achieved that title. Like, why do I need their approval and permission? And so,
Mhm.
or maybe they're not going to like that decision, but I know it's the right thing. And so then giving ourselves that permission.
And there's so much peace in that. When
Mhm.
you're able to make that leap into what brings you peace, it's so nice.
Yeah.
If you're not always trying to satisfy the mentor or the boss or the husband or whatever it is, if you're only seeking to find peace in yourself, it's wonderful. There's so much freedom. That's why I love being 40.
Too. I think not that I care a lot less. I definitely care. I think I'm just clear on what deserves my energy and what
Oh,
doesn't, but I know what I'm fierce about. So, Kelsey and I being roommates together, like we literally shared like a bunk bed
yes.
and then a townhouse together, right? In that space all the time. And so you can't help but compare yourself to the people that you're around the most. And for a long time in my 20s, I really worried that I was too much, that I was too opinionated, that
Hmm.
I was too passionate about things, that I was too much for people. And it
Hmm.
took me until my 30s and coming close to my 40s to be like, I'm okay if I'm not everybody's cup of tea. But the people that love me, and the people that I'm not their thing, like that's cool. Like you go do you. Like I'm not everybody's cup of tea. But I had this comparison of like, everybody loves Kelsey. Am I too much? But we all have whatever it is, some sort of like we all want to fit in and be accepting. And so I think getting through the 30s and 40s of like, I like who I am. I'm
Mhm.
fine going on a hike by myself. Like I like my own company as well. And so I think that the critique in the head, at least for me, has quieted over the years. And it's like, no, I love her, and my body, right? And that's a whole other thing of like loving our bodies as well. But being okay of like, I'm going to change and evolve. And these are the things that are worth my time. And like, you know what? If I am quote unquote too much, it's like, I'm clear what I'm passionate about. Like, you will never fire me up more if I feel like there is injustice or being like unkind to people.
Mhm. And
I'm
it's
so fiercely protective of people's hearts.
And it's okay to change passions.
Yeah.
Like, I thought, when I chose my major, I thought, okay, I'm going to be this business person. This is going to be my identity. But I was 18. I didn't know, you were so clear. I remember you were pre med, you had such a clear path. And I was jealous of you. I'm like, she's passionate about something,
Oh.
and I was like, I'm just going to major in business and see what lands, like I
Mm.
can apply business to anything. So I might as well just major in that. But you were so clear and had such passion. And, over the 23 years, both of us have changed passions multiple times, and that's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Like that's really the headline is like, it's okay to be passionate about something and then change your mind as long as you are a student and intentional with your choices. I think
Mhm.
our world is noisy, especially if you're active in like social media and even on LinkedIn. Our world is super noisy. And so you have to create space, whether that looks like time or a hike, or you have to intentionally create space to be in your own head. And
Mhm.
that's when I think the best decisions are made, is when you really listen to yourself, or what my mom calls God whispers. But
Mhm.
you really have time to listen and make those choices.
Yeah. I thought I was going to wrap and I have one more thought now that you
Yeah.
said that about whether you call it God whispers or Holy Spirit or universe or it's your pituitary gland talking to your heart,
Yeah.
whatever framework it is that people use. I have found that there's always this whisper, but you have to find the space and the stillness
Mhm.
for it. And like, what is that telling? What is that telling you? And like for
Mhm.
me, and everybody's different. Some people know in their head. I know in my body, like I get a full body, like hell yes or no. And if it's a meh, that's because I'm probably still too in my head, or I need to make like the decision more narrow, but like finding those spaces to listen for the whisper. And I've talked about this before, because if the whisper is there, it will get louder and louder, and it will become a roar at some point. And then your body kicks in too, and it's like, nope, I'm going to take you out if you're you're doing the wrong thing.
I always have a physical response to stress, and so I can totally relate to that. Have you ever read the book Seat to Your Soul?
Mm-mm.
I think it's by Gary Zukov, and I'm going to oversimplify this, but he describes this idea called Earth School, and how our soul, the ultimate goal is for our soul to align with our personality. And when we're on Earth, it's our opportunity to use every experience that we have to align those. And then our soul goes on to live in eternity. And so he calls it Earth School. We take every opportunity to learn from it, but we can't learn from it unless we give ourselves space to do so, and the grace to make mistakes. And so he also talks about how if you apply these through the lens of like greed and anger, it becomes a very unfulfilling life. Whereas if you apply it through the lens of love, it becomes very fulfilling. And so I think that's how I was able to make these changes, is like treating every experience as an opportunity to transform and thrive and love. And that is so much more fulfilling than just staying on a single path, because that's what I majored in.
Yeah. I think you bringing it back to university, the Jesuit philosophy, right? Because we went to a Jesuit school, and our university was right. How ought we to live? And the reflection on that, and being men and women in service of others, obviously, but just that big question, right? There wasn't an answer in that. It was a question of, right, how ought we to live? And I love the fact that we've been friends for so long in this moment of time, right? Having the same place, asking the same questions, and our lives going in totally different directions, but still having the common underpinnings of what we value, even if it manifests totally differently in the world. And I think there need to be more conversations of surrounding and people sharing conversations of people that have had very different life experiences and can view things differently, and be friends and support the difference, and the fact that there isn't a right way of doing it, and not just belonging to groups or organizations or communities that think you have to show up and your life has to look a certain way.
Absolutely. I didn't realize how profound that mission statement would be when we were going to school there.
So sneaky. So
It's so
sneaky.
sneaky, those kids.
Thank you so much, my friend. Thank you for having this conversation. And I know our listeners, there are so many people that can resonate with your journey. So thank you for sharing that.
I'm happy to share. Thank you for
my
having me.
friends. Well, until next time, please be kind to yourself and keep experimenting. Thank you for tuning into this episode today. And remember, friends, there is no one right way to do this thing called life. I hope you found this conversation valuable. Please make sure to follow and subscribe on Apple Podcast or Spotify or wherever you may listen. And it would mean the world to me if you went and you clicked on rate the show and left a 5-star rating to help other people find these conversations. Until then, friends, keep experimenting. Talk to you soon.